Anyone who's ever experienced a serious diagnosis will tell you that, regardless of what it is, talking to someone who's been there helps. When Karen Eubanks Jackson was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer in 1993, she couldn't find people within the Black community to talk to about her experience. In response, she created Sisters Network, a nationwide organization dedicated to supporting Black women with breast cancer and educating the public about the crisis of breast cancer in the Black community. I recently spoke with Ms. Jackson and her daughter, Caleen Allen, who has joined her in running the organization. Ms. Jackson, Ms. Allen, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I love a good origin story, so I'm wondering, Ms. Jackson, if I know you've been asked to share your story many times before, but if you would sort of take us back to the beginning to how this began for you with your diagnosis.
Well, it's now close to 30 years this year, and my memory is a little interesting, so bear with me. But in 1993, I was diagnosed when I was living in Los Angeles, and I was living a healthy lifestyle, exercising, trying to eat right. So when I was diagnosed, I wasn't completely surprised because I knew I had a family history. So I was doing proactively getting my mammograms. So you have to think now, I'm having my mammograms and I'm still thinking there's something wrong with my breast because intuitively I could feel something, not with my hand. So I asked the doctor, what else, could he do to let me know that there's nothing wrong with my breast? So he recommended the ultrasound. And I'm staying on this subject because it's very important because it just changed this year as to how you do this. So in asking, that made me a proactive person inquiring because my mammogram said nothing was wrong. So lo and behold, there was a cancer, and he said it's been there a few years. And fortunately, I didn't have triple negative, so it didn't grow fast. It was growing slowly, but it was at stage 2 when I should have found it at pre-cancer because I was looking, So with that experience, knowing that I had insurance, I was proactive, but I was still falling through the cracks. And so in meeting other ladies who were getting their chemotherapy like I was and their radiation, I started inquiring with other women how they felt about what was going on to them. And so I started thinking that I didn't want to just survive breast cancer. I wanted to do something that could change how Black women were being treated and thought of. So in designing the program, we didn't have a blueprint. So it had to be something that really was definitely my vision as to what was missing for women. And sisterhood was very important in access to education because the education was not directed at African American at that time.
Were you younger than the average age for diagnosis when you were diagnosed?
Well, having the cancer in my body by 40, that means I was there, but I didn't know about it till I was about 48, something like that.
So had you started screening at age 40 where the typical?
No, I started screening at age 35.
Because of your family history?
Because of the history, and I did have insurance, and it worked fine.
Yeah.
But I can say if I didn't have insurance, I wouldn't have been screened.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So in meeting the ladies, once I moved to Texas, I decided that I could start a national organization. First of all, I come from a family of creative people, community minded, and so I didn't feel as though I couldn't start a national organization, although I was told by everyone that you can't do that because we didn't have funding and we didn't have access to resources or anything at that time. But determination and persistentness and your passion can get you through a lot of hurdles that are negative that could normally stop you from moving forward. So I was very fortunate that my daughter had the idea of what I should be concentrating on because she has a background in corporate business and communications and marketing. So she gave me some directions with that. So it was, I was very fortunate. And I was in a city like Houston that was a little more receptive to starting something of this type. So 30 years later, we're still the only national organization for African American women in breast cancer, and we have affiliate chapters in 26 cities. So that gives us a direct connect to what women are thinking across the country.
You say on your website, I've been all over your website, that you couldn't find the sisterhood that you wanted at the time of your diagnosis. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yes, I did seek out support because I needed it. Mm-hmm. And I can say that I received the education from the information at these different support meetings, but I didn't find the sisterhood that I was looking for. That camaraderie that after the meeting, you have somebody that is interested in talking to you or hearing from you on the phone about what's going on. None of that was, the feeling of having that was not there. So the sisterhood I was looking for, I created in Sisters Network.
What about the medical community? Like, how did you find their responsiveness to you and your needs?
Well, at that time, the medical community was talking about women, Black women, what we didn't do. We didn't come in for our tests. Everything was very negative, and all the information was about dying, not surviving, not doing well, not having a journey. So I was newly diagnosed with stage 2. So I wasn't thinking necessarily about dying, although they talked about 5-year survival rate, but I let that go. I didn't concentrate on that. Yeah. So I always thought about living and living well and living happy and active. Mm-hmm. So Sisters Network is an organization where we are living well, living happy, and we have women like myself who are long-term survivors. And I know that being proactive in your health, all your health, not just breast cancer, is vital to your survival, period. So women in our organization are very active about self-advocacy and advocacy for their community. Years ago, I had my first mammogram and found a calcification and went through the whole series of several biopsies and excisional biopsy and all of that. And it turned out okay, and it was a couple of months, but I have to say I was fairly like out of my mind for a couple of months. So the fact that you went through what you did with a diagnosis and a lack of sisterhood at the time and were able to start this organization a year later is kind of mind-blowing. Like, how did you find the wherewithal to get that together? Like I said, passion and determination can do a lot for you. Yeah. So where was the germ of the idea? Like, where did it come out where you're like, I'm going to start something, I'm going to do something? It's interesting because the women that I gathered to start the organization, they were thinking about, we're a local group. And I've always, from the very beginning, even when we would meet and when someone would call on the phone, is the National Office of Sisters Network. We didn't even have an office. And when the ladies came to have the meeting at my home, I wouldn't let them tell anyone or themselves that we're meeting at Karen's house. No, we're meeting at our office for the organization. So that mindset of saying who we are before we were, I just think it just made a difference. You talk on your website about health conditions, serious health conditions, not just breast cancer, but being like a difficult conversation to have within the Black community. Can you explain why that is or how that is? In the Black community, fear is definitely a component of that's a negative issue for us and keeps us from getting some information and moving forward. So our organization, we talk about life, not death, because when you think about death, it immobilizes you. Also, the shame was there when I started Sisters Network, and it still exists. Women are ashamed that they've been diagnosed like they did something wrong. And the fact that they now call triple negative, give it a name. When we started, there was no name. It's just that we didn't come in early enough. So all of that was blamed on the patient. You have triple negative, which they didn't call it. That was just breast cancer. And you're stage 3 or 4, and it's your fault. Then that is, I'm assuming, part of your education campaign to women to let them know that it's not. It's not our fault. And also, when I was diagnosed, of course, I asked for the ultrasound. So in our literature, 20 years ago, We start recommending women at 40. That's the standard. But if you have family history or you have a feeling in your breast or you can feel it with your hand, absolutely, no matter what your age is, get your ultrasound and your mammogram.
Now, your daughter, Miss Allen, works with you. Miss Allen, how old were you when your mom was diagnosed?
I was in my late 20s and living here in Houston. And that's one of the reasons she decided to relocate to Houston, because I was newly married, having my first child, her first grandchild. And, you know, the health challenge she was facing, she really honestly didn't think she had a lot of time, maybe 5 years, if that. And so she wanted to have that relationship. And so she decided to relocate to Houston. And so we're grateful that she did.
What were your feelings at the time of her diagnosis?
I'm a researching kind of a person, just as a former journalist. I always want information, facts, you know, whatever the latest information is. So I was not in Los Angeles, and she was not completely shut down, but like anyone who's facing that kind of information, just a fog was there.
Yeah.
And so I immediately tried to start doing as much research as I could about, you know, what's available to her in Los Angeles, and kind of helping her develop a roadmap to decide what was going to be the best care that she was going to seek in Los Angeles. So just trying to be that support system as anybody would be to their family member and loved one during a difficult time. You know, knowledge is power, as she always says, and getting that current information and finding it out and sharing it with the person who is needing it most is what you have to do.
Yeah. Now you all work together now. So how do you make it work?
I've always kind of been in the shadow of Sisters Network since day one, always helping, but not officially working day to day with the organization. In the last 3 years, I've come on board to help with the organization in a full-time capacity, lending my marketing, communication, and strategic partnership skills to the organization. So it's been you know, really wonderful. I'm blessed to have such a courageous mother, and to watch and see what she has built over the last nearly 3 decades. The sad part is there's still so much more work to do, and the women are being diagnosed at a younger age. It could, you know, it's dropping lower and lower. We just had a Instagram live that we did with a reality star who's been sharing her journey, and she was gracious enough to talk to our stakeholders. And we had 2 women on there who said, I'm 17 and I'm a survivor, and I'm 24 and I'm a survivor. Wow. So you don't think that's a reality, but it is. And so for me, coming on board, I'm in my mid-50s, and so it's important to me, of course, to do my mammogram, my ultrasound every year, but to really try to engage in a very targeted way that sector who's under 40, because they are in the fire lane for breast cancer. And so we have to make it real to them. We don't want to spook them. We don't want to, you know, invoke fear, but we want to empower them with the information and education so that they are aware of their bodies, their personal health, you know, genetic testing, just some of the things that wouldn't just be necessarily top of mind, because it's real.
How do you, you know, ride that fine line between educating and making people aware and not scaring them?
I think by examples, showing women who have walked the journey and are living, you know, very full and robust lives despite the fact that they have been diagnosed with breast cancer. I think that the marketing materials that we present to them make it more appealing and user-friendly. You're not trying to paint an unrealistic picture, but if it's all doom and gloom, you can present the facts that are not the most appetizing, but I think it's how you present them. And when you see, you know, the information in a very engaging and thoughtful way, where it makes you want to read it, even though you know it's something you don't want to necessarily read, it's helpful. But like she said, you know, having those first person experiences, showing people who are real to them. Like I said, that's why we don't normally do IG lives. That was our first IG live for Sisters Network. But that's where our young women who are in their 30s and in their late 20s and even in their early 40s, and I'm on IG, we got to meet them where they are. We have a TikTok now, you know, so we have to go where those stakeholders are and then engage them in the manner in which they're going to be receptive. And to have over 6 to 700 people on an Instagram live for 45 minutes on a Thursday night talking about breast cancer in the Black community. And they're engaged. They're, you know, I mean, I'm not saying 600 who, you know, clicked on and then clicked off. 45 minutes to an hour consistently staying on. That is huge.
It is huge.
But it's because of somebody that they could relate to, that they watch, you know, whatever you think about reality TV, it's here. And so this woman is somebody who's in her late 30s, I think she's under 40, triple negative, is using her platform to share her journey. And I knew doing an IG live with her would engage the people that we're trying to talk to because they like her. She's been very revealing, and it made it more real. Yeah. So that's we have to do those type of things to continue to engage the younger Black women.
Did you, I mean, in the series of comments, is there anything that surprised you that you heard from this community who was engaged with the IG live?
A lot of thank yous.
Yeah.
They were very appreciative of her transparency.
Yeah.
They were appreciative that she showed herself shaving her head and taking control. Mm-hmm. They were appreciative of Sisters Network for, you know, making that information available. And then they were very candid about saying that they're a survivor. It was almost like a badge of honor. The ones that had been diagnosed saying, I'm a survivor, I'm a survivor, I'm a survivor, you know, and saying where they're from and that type of thing. And if they weren't, then they said, you know, this makes me want to go get my mammogram. Mm-hmm. So that was really very eye-opening because we weren't sure what we were going to get in terms of netting the participation, and B, what people would receive from it and be as vocal as they were. So that was really good, and you will see more of those. Probably continue with more high profile individuals that people can relate to, because, you know, we're a reality celebrity driven.
Yeah, no, that's the way it is.
That's where people are mentally. Yeah. I don't know, you know, like it or, you know, maybe you like it or don't, but that's where we are. And so we're trying to do everything that we can to be, you know, very engaging and impactful. And so if we can do those things, engage them, and then make an impact, then make them take action, then we've done our job.
So remind me how many national platforms you have across the United States. It's a lot.
There's 26 affiliate chapters, and these are trained advocates so that they can actively engage their community locally. And we're very proud of that, because these are women who are diagnosed, who are surviving, going through their journey, their treatment, that are willing to step forward, learn what they need to learn so that they can better help themselves and their community. So I applaud the women who have been with us for many years and the new ones who are coming on board. And as Caleen has said, our vice president, we are looking to recruit and have access to younger women so that they can help recruit younger women, because that's who's going to have the problem with breast cancer.
And I just might add, as we're adding new chapters, because we have added new chapters since even during COVID, they're skewing younger. And it's a reflection of the demographic that is being diagnosed so much earlier. So you're seeing women in their early 40s who are starting the new chapters. You know, Wisconsin is a younger chapter.
Georgia
is a younger chapter. So is Charleston, South Carolina. So those are some of our newer chapters. And so we're starting to see those numbers, the age be younger.
Mhm.
And so, which is good for us, because it's speaking to the audience that we want to, continue to pull in. Also, those ladies have a different skill set than some of the older members that we have. So you'll see more social media, you'll see more of that engagement from that digital engagement, because that's what they're accustomed to.
So you have the in-person groups across the country. You're now in social media. You will have created the platform that you intended to in terms of creating a sisters network from the beginning. The other side of it is the medical community, and I'm wondering, where you see that they need to improve in addressing breast cancer in Black women.
We're very much interested in research, so clinical trials are essential for our organization to help promote within our community. It's not known as well as it should be, but the fact that we feel we have the trust of our community, that when we say clinical trials is something that can help you as the individual, but help the future direction of the pharmaceutical company's drugs. So too many times over the years, I would hear, well, this drug has not been tested too much on African-American women. They didn't come in, to be a part of it. So some of that's true, but the other hand is that they didn't go to the communities where we are to make it available. So it's a twofold problem that we're working on as an organization for our advocacy.
Looking back to where you started and your goals then, do you feel like they're similar? Do you feel like you've added new ones on? What are you looking towards in the future?
Well, both things are true. Our goals are very similar, and we have added new directions, which makes our goals expanded. Our capabilities are more available. Now, you have to remember that when I started, I didn't even know how to use a computer. Can you believe that? And so I had friends taking care of my computer skills that I lacked. So I can relate to some of the members that are older when we started. So I didn't harass them that they didn't know how to do something. We actually just had classes, and we had them in group settings so everybody could learn. And those who had the skills further ahead helped those who were behind. Because I definitely needed help, but it didn't stop me from still using my skills that could help move us forward. It just didn't move as fast as it could have had I had those skills originally. Now we have them.
I'm wondering if there are any particular issues you'd like to speak to, like, possibly the need for guidelines that make it possible for women to get screening before age 40, or to get the ultrasound that they need, or cultural sensitivity.
First of all, it's a great question, and my first response is yes to all of the above. And specifically for Sisters Network, what you're going to begin to see, which we've always been advocates, obviously, but I think in a much more intentional and strategic way, we will be advocating through our National Black Breast Cancer Health Equity Policy and Community Action Task Force to advocate for change on the legislative side. And this won't be Sisters Network by ourselves. This is a collective effort that we will have to bring in other advocacy groups with similar goals and interests in the breast cancer space, so that we are unified collectively as one voice. But we really want to advocate for the guidelines to be revisited, particularly lowered, and then also to revisit the initial screening process, because the dense breast is an issue for all women. And so having a mammogram and an ultrasound as a check and balance, we feel is very important, regardless of family history, just because we know that no test is fail safe.
Yeah.
It just is. And we've seen enough women who've fallen through the cracks that it's a no-brainer. For instance, when we open our Karen Jackson Breast Cancer Assistance Program, which is a national program founded in 2006 to provide financial assistance to survivors nationwide, as well as mammogram and or ultrasound if needed. to underserved women or underinsured women, we only will pay for 3D mammograms. Why would we pay for 2D when 3D is the most current and groundbreaking technology available? So as an organization, when we partner with a facility, we want our ladies will only get the best that's available, or we're doing them a disservice. We're, you're almost in contradiction of your own messaging. And so so those type of things, lowering the guidelines, preferably to 35, so that you can catch it early. Those women are in childbearing age. And so particularly Black women, if you're in childbearing and then by the time you go at age 40, you've got 5 years of having children that, the tumor and the hormones, and it's just like a perfect storm.
Yeah.
And so we know that we've got to look at those guidelines, and then also the screening mechanisms, perhaps marrying the ultrasound and mammogram 3D together so that they're not separated.
Right.
So we know that is a financial issue with insurance companies, and we know that is a big component, but our women, our sisters, deserve better.
Are there any questions that I have not asked you that you would like me to ask you?
Well, we'd like to mention about our up and coming events, because our Stop the Silence, which is a slogan, but it is also the name of our national walk. That's how we fund the Karen Jackson breast cancer program.
So we are hosting the only national, well, this will be the 13th year. So let me start with that. So it's the National African American Breast Cancer Walk, Stop the Silence. And it's the only national Black breast cancer walk. And as you made mention, a portion of the proceeds do benefit the Karen E. Jackson Breast Cancer Assistance Program. It's a beautiful occasion to see so many women, men, children celebrating, honoring, and creating awareness about the Black breast cancer crisis, which we believe we do have a Black breast cancer crisis when you have the staggering statistics that we all know so well. So we're very proud of that event. Also in October, we will be hosting the National Black Breast Cancer Summit, kicking off Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the weekend of October 6th through the 8th, having leading medical experts from, some of the leading cancer centers, including, MD Anderson, Weill Cornell Cancer Center, the list goes on. But we will have those leading medical experts presenting information, as well as high participation from, of course, our affiliate chapter members, but women in the community who will travel to Houston for that very important breast cancer summit, where we're focusing the spotlight on the Black breast cancer issue.
I'm going to hit you with one more question. As you were talking, again, coming from your website, very clearly stating there's a crisis in breast cancer in the Black community. If you would like to just state for the public who may not be aware, what that is, or riff through some of the statistics, which are pretty staggering.
Well, Black women are 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with triple negative.
Yeah.
We're 42% more likely to die of breast cancer. Our 5-year survival rate is 10% lower than any other ethnic group. And we tend to get the most aggressive breast cancer, again, with triple negative. In any other area, you would consider that a crisis when you have those staggering kind of numbers.
Right.
And so we were the first to coin it a breast cancer crisis, and we're now starting to see some of our peer organizations, as well as the medical community, when they're hosting webinars or talks, etc., they're using the word crisis, because we felt in 2021, when we decided to really just step out, and we felt it was, Mrs. Jackson in particular felt it was the responsibility of Sisters Network to coin it and to take any hits that are not friendly by calling it what it is. Because let's be real, when it comes to that, farmer's not going to like that, medical's not going to like it, but somebody's got to say it, because if there's a crisis, then that means their action needs to be taken.
Yeah.
The awareness and the outreach can continue and will continue, but if we don't call it a crisis to spur some sort of action-oriented movement behind it, then we're doing a lot of good, sisters, other organizations, etc. But are we really going to move the needle? And I would say no. I mean, I'm no mathematician, and I'm no, I'm pretty good writer and all of that. But what I would say is, if you have the numbers that we have and you don't make a change, how is it going to change? It just doesn't equal up. And so again, it is a crisis when you have this number of women, particularly Black women and all women, dying of breast cancer. And it's time for, the advocacy groups, the medical associations, and the pharma to come together, acknowledge it, and let's all make a big change so that we can save all women's lives from breast cancer, because early detection is not a slogan, it's a reality.
You all are very inspiring, and I really am grateful that you took the time to chat with us today.
No, thank you. We appreciate you, Everyday Health, giving us the platform to share information about Sisters Network and to introduce us to some of your audience that may or may not be familiar with the organization. And I appreciate you combing through that website.
I'll be on it more, and I'll be back in touch more. So,
okay, fair enough.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.